Okay, this is the open member meeting. Steering committee runs it. For all you people who have been here before or are generally bored, the first thing you're going to want to give you something to do instead of listening to this garbage. This laser can be found at, this is the lowest powered one they have, at wildlasers.com. Wickedlasers.com, pardon me. WICKEDLASERS.com. They're in China. It'll be at your place in a week. They're wonderful. I got tired of wimpy lasers. Okie doke. No, but they have ones that will. They have ones that, as I said, this is the lowest power, the one they have. Okay. The steering committee is something that's about 6 months old. Well, let me go to the next slide.
Last summer.
Pardon? Last October.
You
So,
were elected in the summer.
pardon?
You were elected in July '05.
Oh, okay, so 8 months old or whatever. The agenda is going to be steering committee presentation, for which you have to suffer through me. I'm the chair of the steering committee. Would other members of the steering committee stand up, raise their hands, or otherwise make obnoxious? Okay. The program committee, you've already seen Steve. We'll make that presentation. He's back there in the back corner. The financial report will be our heroine Betty from Merit, who's right over here. And then a mailing list report, an administrative panel report from Chris Malater, who's hiding around here somewhere, as I just saw him. There he is. So anyway, but this is all talking heads. We'd rather be listening ears. Okay? So interrupt, comments, the microphone is open throughout. Okay? The steering committee report. What's been going on in the steering committee? As I said, we're trying to grow ears. So we're trying to hear what the membership wants. The steering committee, all these committees and all this garbage was formed essentially because membership scale and time, et cetera, forced us into a level of organization which we previously didn't have. And so now we're trying to see which way the people who actually ride on the bus want to go. So the steering committee is responsible for all the other craziness, like the mailing list committee, the program committee, working with Merit on logistics, stuff like that. But we try not to micromanage. We're trying to deal with business 101. We're kind of like the board of directors. We are not supposed to be the operators of the company. We're just trying to set policy, guidance, et cetera, et cetera. It's the steering committee. We don't have the brakes and the gas pedal too, and we don't fix the engine. Okay? We're trying to establish normal but minimal business practice. And we have semi-weekly telcons, and the minutes are on a website because one of the things we're trying to do most is transparency, right? This is not a magic thing that happens behind the curtain. And so minutes, and they're published, and Martin Hannigan tells us what he likes and doesn't like. There's Martin, hey! And he's the only one we get feedback on those. Has anybody else done them? I'm going to do like the end user license agreement the company did, that down at very near the bottom they said, if you get this far and read this, send in that you have read it and we will pay you $1,000. And it took 3 months before anybody did. Right? So, I mean, we try to be interesting. So some of the things you asked for were a Monday through Wednesday meeting instead of a Sunday through Tuesday meeting. Here you are. This is not a fixture. It's not a final change. Do you like it? Please tell us. You don't like it? Would you rather have it pink? Okay. We just had a newcomers session. The newcomers, did it meet your needs? What could be different? What could be better? Would you like it mauve? Okay. There is no more terminal room. It was terminal. There, I believe this time, will be a couple PCs attached to printers if you need to print your boarding pass to get out of town. Yes, there are two. Right near the registration desk. Does that work for you? Try it, tell us. We'll put a terminal room back if you really want it, but I think those days are gone, right? We kind of put it with the dial telephones, okay? And people wanted the badge fonts changed. The badge fonts are changed, and now they're colored badges depending upon whether you're, go, Bill.
I know, on this last one, I think we actually missed the target. The goal of the badge changes was supposed to be so that when you're bumping into somebody and you can't remember the name, that they can't see your eyes looking down at the badge. So having a larger company name or a larger person's name would be much better, much more effective at the networking. That's really what you're looking for a lot of times when you come to NANOG, is I need to talk to somebody at AT&T. And seeing that very high up on the badge, very big font, and or the name much bigger would be much more effective, I think. If it wasn't a font change issue, it was a question of size of those two specific pieces of information on the name tag.
If you want to talk to people at AT&T, there's a cemetery nearby. I worked there. Go Red. Bill, what you're trying to say is name and organization should both be big type so it's easily readable by people as blind as myself from a couple feet away?
Yes. Bigger than the current org type. Twice the size.
Sure you can stop 2.5? We're not into micromanagement, right?
Hi, I'm new here, so.
Oh, by the way, yeah, Bill,
Hello.
you should have said who you are.
Daniele Arena from Namex. Since we're talking about badges, I advise you to print them on both sides.
That would be new. You're a genius. Every meeting I go to has the same problem, and nobody's ever come up with that suggestion. You're the man. Are you the guy who made it so that bridges, you only have to pay the toll one way now? Whoever thought of that one was the same. Oh my God. That is great. That is great. Whew. Okay, what we didn't do, we didn't change the number of meetings a year. The reason is, no, it's not even because some people wanted it, some people didn't. The finance didn't work out. They're fixed costs that predominate some expenses. So currently we get to amortize those fixed costs over 3 meetings a year. If we tried to do it for 2 meetings a year, we will leave it to an exercise for the student to what's going to happen to the attendance fee. And yes, there are people in our membership who say, I'm from big corporate X, and I don't care if it's $1,000 a meeting. Yes, but there are others who do care. And we really need to serve both sets. Okay, so it didn't change. Something else that didn't change is working lunch. It was a great idea because you'll see tomorrow what happens at lunchtime is the diaspora. Okay, but the hotels have a monopoly on food. Guess what they charge based on the fact that they have a monopoly? We were speaking of telephone companies just a minute ago. Okay, so we're trying to be more sensitive to locale and hotel choice in ease of getting to a variety of lunch places. But the idea of having food plugged in or having the hotel provide food is just not economical. You wouldn't like it. Okay. Something else we worked on is rights and data. There were some questions and issues about your presentation. So, just for your information, the NANOG trademark is held by Merit. The presentations are copyright by the author, but they grant the right to freely distribute but not modify to NANOG. The PC is drafting this formally and it'll all be done. And on your files, copyright notices on slides are okay if they're very small and unobtrusive. What it means to be a member should be checked in the charter. About the only real meanings are...
What does it mean to be small and unobtrusive?
Forget it. About the things that characterize a member are attendance at meetings and participation in the mailing list. And can you vote to put buffoons like me up at a microphone? And that's about it. In other words, you don't get a membership card. There is no secret decoder ring. Bummer that. And no secret handshake even. And so on. So it's, NANOG does not actually exist. So it's very hard to be a member of it. It's like, who runs the internet? Well, people try to now, but when we first asked that question, it was a great joke because nobody did, right? But there is attendance at meetings, there is participation in the mailing list, and there is who gets to vote for the steering committee and go to the NANOG webpage to the charter section, and the rules and regs are there. The program committee, we finally got the first actual formally appointed program committee, and that process kind of worked. Why haven't you submitted a talk? Right? We all complain about not enough protein. Well, there's plenty on the hoof right there. Okay? And what do you want to hear? What is protein as opposed to sugar? So, and that, let's save that one, if you don't mind, for the poor program committee who's next. Okay. The mailing list, the steering committee worked the process of filling the vacancy left by Steve retiring. We're still working with the ML panel to document their process. Maybe we need to document the process of getting them to document their process. We're still working with the ML panel to develop an appeals process. And what we did do is the statistics are published monthly on the NANOG website. Another, we don't have it.
I got it from a steering committee member that was put together, so I assume we have it.
5 bullets is not a process. We'll get to that, I assure you. Okay. Statistics are published monthly on the website, like how many posters there are and how many people have been shot and stuff like that. There is an issue of appointing members of the ML panel. Currently, there are no terms, et cetera, et cetera. So the steering committee is floating a charter proposal. Charters are amended. The charter is amended once a year in October. So we're starting to float a proposal, and it's a straw proposal, and we just parallel the SC and PC. So just to throw it up. So we expect it to be modified. We expect argument over it. But what it means is 2-year terms. They're staggered. 2 sequential terms max without a vacation. That's the same as the program committee and the steering committee. Change it, comment, propose, etc.
Hey, Randy?
Yeah, Bill.
Just
Who are you, Bill?
Bill Norton. I work for Equinix. One thing that's probably worth talking about is the use of NANOG futures for discussing this very type of issue.
It's coming. It's coming. Okay. More on the mailing list process. This would get why to do this. A, it gives members a light at the end of the tunnel. Being on the mailing list committee is probably not a lot of fun. A, you have to read the mailing list. That's bad enough. Okay. It also means volunteers would know what they're signing up for. It's not a life in jail. It's just, 2 years. And it allows change without a bad vibe of removal. The natural life cycle. It's also normal organizational practice. So that's why we're tossing it out there, and we figure between now and October we should be able to sort it out. Okay. Changes in charters in general. October's the end of the process, so start now. There's a straw proposal up for the mailing list panel. The current charter was the startup charter, has a lot of startup isms in it. So one of them is Steve's name, stuff like that. We have no other proposals received. Now is the time, if you want to change the NANOG charter, to start the cultural discussion, because if you haven't figured it out, geeks take a long time to decide these things. And that's not bad. Okay, new ideas that we've had. A blog, no progress. A wiki, no progress. The idea of /nog, no interest was shown. Okay, trial new tech gear at the next NANOG. We haven't done it. Okay, video in hallways. Did you like it last time? Yes. You did. And it was even pretty funky. It was kind of small and hidden. But you liked it? Do we have it this time? It's back.
Same size, but in a better location.
Same size, better location, Dr. Betty says. So, feedback, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry? Where is it?
It'll be out near the cafe. It's not out yet, but it'll be out by the cafe tables just outside of the registration area. So nice seating room up near where the food will be.
By the way, with the disappearance of the terminal room, there are breakout rooms this time. There's more informal seating, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't found any of it, but I'm assured it'll be there, and we should all kind of try it and feedback on it, right? I think using that space that way should, well, the people who cared about logistics thought that using the space that way would be a lot more fun for people, and a lot of us come here to talk with old friends and so on and so forth, and not to have our picture taken, Ren.
Well, yes,
Who are you, Ren?
Ren Provo, AT&T Internet Services. And if you take a look at nanog.multiply.com, you'll see that there are about 100 pictures now with names and affiliations to help some of the newcomers find the old timers. And if you need a picture, if you're not up there, please see me. I'll gladly put you up. nanog.multiply.com.
Yeah, that was one idea we dropped on the floor. Your list, Bill. Bill's keeping a list of bright ideas we've had and trying to track and make us do it. I've even suggested, should we start a ticket system? But that's one, and it's really cheering that Ren's doing it. So that's especially for newcomers, or you wanted to see Charlie or Charlene, and you've never actually met them, and you can't go around reading all those little badges, especially with the font size they are. Okay, here's the mailing list. Here you go, Bill. There's, of course, nanog at nanog.org. It is a not moderated list in the classic sense. It's it has a topic that's enforced, and that is engineering and ops discussions. If you want to discuss NANOG as the meta discussion, in other words, what's NANOG, what's the meaning of NANOG, why are the people running the NANOG list wonderful, bad, evil, pink? Okay, it is NANOG Futures at nanog.org. So we can't really, not allowed to talk about what's already happened. You can only talk about things that might happen. Maybe we should change the name of that. And then there's the steering committee. You can throw bricks at us. By the way, you'll notice this time we did supply fruit. It's not rotten, but Dallas is heavily air conditioned. And the program committee you can write to. That's finally got changed? Darn. Oh, nanog at nanogpc.org? NANOG PC. Okay, well, beat me up shortly. And then the mailing list administrative team is at nanogadmin at nanog.org.
Please move to the mic now.
What can we do? And by we, I don't mean we gods of the steering committee. You notice I do not stand on podia, et cetera, et cetera. What can the people who try to just herd the logistics and the cats and everything do to help make this more productive, useful, fun, et cetera, for the people who are going through pain and taking time out of their lives to get here? or to read the mailing list, etc. What do you want out of this that you're not getting? Or what is working and what isn't working? And what are you getting that you don't want? It's so much fun. The mailing list has gotten very boring, by the way. Where'd everybody go? They went away for the holidays and never came back. You people have a problem out there. You either need booze or coffee. Hello? Are these the same people that subscribe to that mailing list? Does something happen when you take your fingers off the keyboard?
Randy, maybe this means that everyone is happy with you.
Then the next meeting we need to have shrinks. Steve, you're it. Now you get to hear from the program committee.
Yay, there it works. Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Feldman. I work for CNET Networks. I'm the program committee chair, according to the charter anyways. My name is in it, like Randy said, but only for one more meeting after this. So here's what we did this meeting. Disclaimers first. Opinions are mine. Mistakes are mine. The results, everything else that you see here, the good stuff, is the result of hard work by the entire program committee, for which we all owe a lot of thanks. For this program, we received 26 submissions. This includes 2 that sort of happened in the last week. That's down from 41 at the last meeting, which, as you can see, is a rather disturbing negative trend. Of those 26, we accepted 22, some of them after going through the process of being conditionally accepted and asking for changes. 1 was canceled because the speaker couldn't make it. 1 was withdrawn because the speaker couldn't get permission to submit it, I think. And 2 were rejected because they didn't meet our criteria. As I mentioned, 2 of them were really late, which means that I got to make the decision myself, and I accepted both of them. Things that we could improve on. We could do a better job of finding speakers. As I said, 26 isn't a good number. 41 was a better number. We'd like to see higher numbers next time. There's some work that we can do on our internal tools, which I won't bother talking about. The program format is different this time, as Randy mentioned. Because of some feedback we received last time, we decided we'd try a Monday through Wednesday schedule rather than a Sunday through Tuesday. There were people who mentioned that weekends are supposed to be spent with families, and weekdays are supposed to be spent with colleagues. So we're doing that this time. So those of you who came in early for this, great. Hopefully we'll see everyone else show up Monday morning, despite the snowstorms. We'll see. Anyway, what this means is that the tutorials, which were on Sundays, have been moved now into the afternoons along with the BOFs. So we have plenary sessions every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from 9 o'clock until we're done, which is around lunchtime. Those are the talks that the program committee reviewed and selected, and you get to see. The afternoons are spent with birds of feather sessions and tutorials, which we've tried to arrange so that people won't want too much to be in 2 places at once. That's never a perfect job, so apologies in advance if you find yourself having to clone yourself. And evenings are social events. We have tomorrow evening a party hosted by Yahoo, which I understand is going to be a blast, so thank you, Yahoo. and our beer and gear this time will be on Tuesday evening after the afternoon sessions. We also had a newbie meeting, or newcomers orientation, I guess was the official name, this time. As Randy mentioned, it's an experiment. Some people asked for it. It's partly so newcomers can understand what we're about, but also largely a chance for them to meet us, the people who've been around here for a long time. It was an hour and a half long. The first half hour of it, I stood up here and talked. Susan stood up here and talked. The rest of it was mingling. We had food back there. People sat around, stood around and talked to each other, and hopefully everyone got to meet somebody. We've had discussions of tracking. That means having more than one plenary session at a time. You really need two things in order to do that. One of them is sufficient space to do it in, and the second one is sufficient content to do it in. Neither one really happened this time. If you only have to reject two proposals, there really it doesn't mean there's a lot extra. One thing we are doing this time, which we've had talked about before, is lightning talks. This is where during the course of the meeting, people get to sign up for a 10-minute slot and talk about something that's interesting for 10 minutes. At the end of 10 minutes, you're yanked off the stage, even if you're in the middle of a word. There will be soon, I think, a link off of the main NANOG page to the page about lightning talks. Tomorrow morning, about 9:15, the actual sign-up page will appear. To sign up, you'll need to submit a title and an abstract for your talk. And the program committee will look through them and make sure that they're acceptable using pretty much the same criteria we use for the mailing list. If it's technical, it's probably okay. If it's personal insult, it's probably not okay, that type of thing. I'm sort of making this up as I go along, but so that there's not a big rush, we'll, up until 2 o'clock, we'll accept submissions, and then we'll randomly choose from the ones that meet the criteria. So there's no penalty for if you're 30 seconds later than the next guy. If there are still slots available after that, then we'll keep submissions open. Those will be first come, first serve until Tuesday evening, and then we'll close them. So if you have something you think is interesting to say, you don't need slides, you don't need a well-polished presentation. But if you think there's something interesting, by all means, sign up. We'd love to hear it. These are informal things, not like what you're going to be seeing tomorrow and Tuesday. Feedback. We, the program committee, want to hear what you think of the program, what you think we can do better, what you think we've done well. There's a couple ways to talk to us in person. We're wearing badges with colors on them. Yellow and green, I think, are the program committee colors. You can send mail to us at nanogpc@nanog.org, or you can send mail that everyone can see on Nanog Futures. We watch both. We respond. And finally, as Randy mentioned, we want to have kind of an open discussion here. I don't know if right now we want to do it or wait till the other presentations are done. But the PC would like to hear from you about the topic selection, both in general and this time, what you think we could do better, and how we, the PC, and you, the community, can help us with that. So, Randy, do you want to go now or have the other reports? Okay. Anybody want to get up and go first? Yay.
Joe Hool, AT&T. I'm a newbie, and I got to confess I haven't scoured the website either. But one of the things I'm surprised that I haven't heard yet is, what is the mission or purpose of this organization? It might help if we knew that. It might help us develop content for you and be able to present things and be more responsive in our questions.
You know, that's a good question, and I'm not sure it's actually written down anywhere other than on sort of on the top of the charter page, where it says that we're a group of network operators who talk about network operation stuff. We're not exclusive to large ISPs. We're not exclusive to backbone providers or telcos. We try to be open to anybody who operates a large network using internet technology, IP technologies, content providers, large enterprises, that sort of thing. That means that there's a diversity of interests among the group, Not everyone's going to want to see every talk. Not everyone's going to have anything useful to contribute to every talk. But it means that we get a good group of people together who share common interests and hopefully have things that we can all learn from each other.
Maybe I can ask the question in a slightly different way. For those of you who are here today, what are some of the obstacles for you to present a talk here at NANOG? What are the inhibitors? It can be any one inhibitor. Why not give a talk? Yeah, in the back. What talks would be relevant to this group? That's a good question. Someone shout a relevant topic out. Security. I know Joe would say IPv6. Edge technologies like what, Rob?
Like last mile stuff, everything from new developments in DSL to what DOCSIS 3 dot, 5 dot, whatever is going to get us to 802.15 WiMAX to 16 WiMAX to
Last mile, so okay. Everyone back here. Peering? Okay.
another how to convert from OSPF to ISIS talk is always
Well, I think a problem that confronts a lot of operators is economics. And that seems like a rather interesting subject to me with my academic hat on.
Say more about what you mean.
We will now open the book to chapter 11.
Yeah, I mean, not just, the concepts of business models, but what are the macroeconomic events that are actually affecting this industry?
Excellent point. Randy just said that Jeff Houston gave an excellent talk on that last time. I thought those were great talks. I thought Jeff's keynote overarching vision of some of these business and technical issues I thought was terrific.
And I just in the last Alzheimer's period posted a pointer to Potter.net, his monthly article, which was another view of that same subject. I think Cho-san, who I think is sitting over here, should tell us about broadband deployment in Japan. Pardon me, I'm Randy Bush, IIJ. The J does stand for Japan. And Cho-san is my coworker. But tell us about the economics and availability of it. If you're in anything except the smallest town in Japan, you can get 100 base T for $30 a month. Okay, and Cho-san has done some excellent measurement stuff on what that does to backbones and the whole economics and deployment. But there's also, somebody was saying the last mile on the edge is we are, of the developed countries, the furthest behind in the last mile. So if we look to Japan, if we look to Korea, if we look to some of Europe, we'll see where we'll be in 5 years if the telcos ever wake up.
Let me make a comment too. On behalf of the program committee, we have some assumptions about what you people want to hear, or more particularly what you don't want to hear, which I hope are valid, but you need to tell us if they're not. We assume you don't particularly want to hear sales pitches from router vendors. We assume you don't particularly want to hear about like 5 years out standards in wireless technology that may or may not happen. We assume you don't want to hear talks about internet politics like what's going on at ICANN sort of thing. If these are valid assumptions or not valid assumptions, they ought to be challenged.
I just want to go back to one thing, because I think we've heard a number of different ideas popping up here about topics that might be of interest to different groups of this audience, but I think there's one very important piece that's missing, and that is finding somebody who actually take the step to speak. to put together an abstract, to put together some slides, to feel comfortable enough with the material and with their company backing them to do this, that they'll actually come to NANOG and give a presentation. I was speaking to somebody earlier who said, you know, for the last 9 months to a year, we've been focusing on testing out IPv6 equipment and seeing if it was interoperable, putting it through the paces, and just going through that process. We spend a huge amount of money in doing this. I think that would be very good data for this audience. I think they'd love to have that information shared. And there's even probably a willingness for the person and the company to step forward. I think they need to have some encouragement, maybe some shepherding, in order to help them go through the process. But that's the kind of stuff I think we need to work on in order to get that number up higher. Steve's absolutely right. If you have a forum like this important to this community, and only 23 talks submitted, 21 accepted, there's some problems there. We need to find a way of getting more of you guys to turn in talks. And I personally welcome any ideas you guys might have on how we could possibly do that.
And what we as the program committee can do to help that too. Should we be soliciting more? Should we offer to mentor? Things like that.
Tom Scholl with AT&T. One thing that I did notice was, you know, it's kind of difficult to probably have a talk about deployments and things like that when vendor bashing is not permitted. I mean, it's really hard to go into say, well, you know, you can't poke holes in something and without bashing a vendor. And since the vendors are so intertwined with NANOG, it just seems like you're limited in what you could say there.
Is that true, Steve? Are vendors intertwined with NANOG?
Always, yes. No. The truth is we work very hard to remain independent. It turns out that, yes, indeed, vendors do provide financial support in form of the beer and gear and things like that, but vendors do not influence the program. If you look at the program committee, yes, there are probably a couple vendor representatives on it, but it's far from the majority. If you look at the program, I think you'll find this time at least that most of the plenary talks are not vendors. Many of the tutorials are, for reasons which I think are very interesting, primarily because they have the budget to do that, I think, much more so than operators do. But no, I won't go so far as to say that vendor bashing is accepted, but I don't think that honesty is disallowed. I mean, if you can honestly say that this particular router doesn't do X, and it's true, then I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to say that. What you shouldn't be able to say is vendor X is evil and you should never buy their stuff. That's a different thing.
But I think in the past we have done comparisons in stacks where performance with TCP backoff and such was measured and graphed and compared, and bugs were in fact highlighted. And the question always came up from the audience, did you report this back to the vendor? And in fact, the answer typically was yes, and progress was being made towards fixing that type of stuff. I think that's well within the range of reasonable interactions in this group, don't you?
Yeah, I certainly do. I remember a talk a couple of years ago that we had about the problems with third-party vendors of SFPs, and the guy, I think University of Wisconsin, I think it was, I'm not sure where he was from, got up and told us, well, you can do this with vendors X and Y, but not vendor Z and Q, and there was no problem with that. It was the truth.
Hi, Virendra with River Domain. I would personally be interested in something like lesson learned. I mean, what do vendors do? I mean, in the event of a malware, or in the event of a denial of service, or in the event of a high spike on their circuit, how do they keep up with that traffic, and what tools do they use to mitigate those events? I would personally be interested in something like that.
I agree with that completely. I think the lesson learned talks are some of the are some of the very most interesting ones we have here. At this time on Wednesday morning, there's going to be a panel on things that happened after Hurricane Katrina and the like, where we're going to actually hear from some of the service providers who had problems as a result of that. And I think some of the things they're going to say are going to be very interesting, and should have things that we can take back and hopefully use when building our own networks. More of that is definitely interesting. And if an interesting network event happens, I really hope that we will get submissions on that for next time. Anyone else? Okay, then that ends my stuff. Thank you all for your constructive comments. We will, of course, try to take it to heart and come up with a good program for you next time, too. Thank you. So next we have Betty Burke, who's going to give us the Merit Financial Report.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to be quick. I've got a few slides. Again, I'm sorry. I'm Betty Burke from Merit Network. As many of you know, I am the project manager, which ultimately means I'm responsible for reporting to the Merit Board of Directors on the activity that we all refer to as Merit. But I certainly do not do this meeting alone. Merit very much appreciates the efforts of Minnie, the steering committee, the program committee, the list admins, and certainly a whole host of Merit staff behind me that take care of providing this meeting to all of us. My job tonight is to just give you a little bit of a background. I'm going to go really quickly through these slides so that I can address any questions that you might have. But I thought it'd be interesting, again, to include in a sort of a meeting update, just an attendance chart, just adding to this ongoing chart so you can all see what's happening with attendance, so I don't have to just report a number. Give you a financial report from our meeting that we just had in LA, NANOG 35. Give you an update on some predictions that I see for 36. Just some general updates and acknowledgments. This is the attendance chart, so you can see from the beginning of time how the attendance is looking. It was very nice that we see the chart going back up for attendance from LA. There were certainly some valleys there that we all experienced. It's hopefully not going to return to us anytime soon, but that gives us some information. It gives us some trends that we can look for when we look at planning meetings. There's a lot of information behind these charts. I didn't put all of it out there, but I'd be more than willing to speak with anyone throughout the meeting or through email with the steering committee. All of these meetings have locations, and that, of course, drives attendance as well. So it's not just the time of the year, but it's the location, and the screen would get really, really busy. But the important thing is you can see that Merit and the steering committee pays attention to trends. Here's the financials from NANOG 35. One of the things, given the evolution that we went through the past year or so, is how to report budget information to you. Merit is on an academic budget year, which means a fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. So what I plan to do is give the community an update on year-end budget close in our June meeting, give you a prediction in our October meeting, and then in February just give you a meeting update so that we don't go through the same sort of budget numbers, but you'll see a full budget report in June and a full budget report in October. Susan R. Harris, who is our NANOG webmaster, will also be putting this budget information up on the NANOG website so that you'll be able to refer to it through the normal process. This information that I'm going to present, even though in a generalized, rolled up fashion, I I'll be happy to discuss with anyone. Each one of these numbers have very specific budget numbers assigned to them or amounts, and these are audited numbers from Merit's financials as reported to our board of directors. For our LA meeting, the revenue was $267,000. Our expenses totaled $240,000. Of those expenses, we spent $16,431 on equipment and supplies just to put the meeting together. We spent $9,255 on travel expense for the Merit staff that support the meeting on site, and that's just people who work at the meeting. We did not, and again, this is from July to October expenses, have any Merit meeting staff travel, which means there wasn't anyone traveling anywhere else. Susan R. Harris, myself, or other Merit staff who are on the account traveling that would have been prorated to the NANOG account. We did not have any speakers that we had to sponsor any expense for to attend the meeting in LA. We spent $93,879 on the hotel, and that's the meeting rooms, the hotel AV, and the food that we consume at the meeting. The administrative overhead is a number of numbers rolled together. That's $120,739. What that is made up of from July to October is administrative staff salaries, technical staff salaries, and other general G&A at Merit that has to be charged to the NANOG account. It's really what is really the expense overhead for Merit hosting NANOG. Which means if you take what we received in revenue for the LA meeting against the expenses, there's $26,891 in the bank. I'd have to go back, but I think it's 518. And then again, excuse me, what I'll do in June is then give you a full budget report, which will break out all the numbers in detail. This is just sort of giving you a by-meeting detailed report of where we stand. NANOG 36 predictions, because again at Merit, given we're a nonprofit organization, which means we need to be cost recovery, I forecast ahead what do I see the budget to look like or some of the impacts for this meeting. And what I can tell you is we're setting at about 340 attendees without cancellations due to the bad weather. And what we're seeing is a number of email messages from folks on the East Coast that aren't able to or are indicating they may not be able to make it to the meeting. So we're really not sure exactly what registration will be tomorrow morning, but we know right now we're at about 340. We had 8 beer and gear sponsors, which these are the vendors who sponsor our Tuesday evening reception this time. We're down by 2. We generally hope to get 10 sponsors to host our events. We had 8 this time. We also really try, if you've been to our website, to get vendor participation or sponsor participation in our breaks sessions, and we were unsuccessful this time in getting any sponsors. So what all of those 2 elements means together is our revenue number may be down slightly from what it was in LA. Our expenses, we expect them to be about the same. The hotel expense, as we look at what we've used, the space, our room blocks, which are covered in our food bill, it'll probably be about the same as it was in LA. I brought 2 extra staff members with us this time to the meeting to make sure that we were able to provide the kind of wireless networking and tool support that we come to depend on at the meeting. And the really good side of the coin for all of us is that I have fewer equipment expenses. So we spend typically time in October beefing up our equipment and things that we need to do on site for the meeting. And I did that in October, and we didn't have any of those expenses for our February meeting. Just to give you a sense of the update, what do we do with that money? As you've heard many times from the steering committee, both from Randy and from Steve, we worked on a number of things that were obvious to you, some things in the background that aren't obvious to you. It took a while, to get comfortable with how to report the budget. And as I indicated, we also wanted to make sure at Merit that we were giving you audited budget numbers. So it took a little bit of time back home to improve on our budget reporting process at Merit so that I could share this kind of information with you and feel comfortable. Not that there was anything not to feel comfortable about, but if any of you have worked inside of an academic institution, it's really difficult to take an academic budget reporting style for an organization like NANOG and parse numbers out that would make sense to all of you, and that took a little bit of time. We've also improved our video wiring solutions at the meeting. We hope that it will be easier for us to set up the video logistics for presentation and broadcasting, and in the long run save us some money because we won't have the heavy video RGB cables that we've been hauling around with us in these big white crates, and sort of updating and investing in that technology. We're also improving on the statistics, the reporting information of what goes on at these meetings, both from our budget reporting process as well as the list administration. There's a group of folks back at Merit that actually does the programming effort so those statistics can be made available to you. And then, of course, there's the new meeting format. While I really do give tremendous credit to the steering committee and the program committee for advising and pulling the information together on presenting the changes for all of you, in large part there's a number of Merit staff in the background that have to make it happen for you. And Carol Wadsworth has spent a great deal of time making sure that the hotel logistics are set up well in advance and that our rooms can complement the agenda that the program committee puts together. Some of the things that we'll be looking at, and I can give you a report on in our June meeting, but I thought I would share with you, is that Merit is in the process of looking for a new chief executive officer. So not that that's a dramatic impact on the organization. I just thought it would be good for all of you to know that I'll get a new boss by June, hopefully. One of the other things that we're doing in the background that I think will help everyone and also include the ability to capture Ren's photographs is tying the voting process, which we all went through in July, to the registration process. We have some work going in on the very we now have separate processes, and I'm going to merge both processes with some aid of programmers back at Merit so that we'll have one database that will handle the voting process and the registration process. As you enter information about yourself once, it'll take care of both processes, and so you won't have to keep going through this, and because we'll develop a database, we'll also have a way of capturing photos and other information and sharing that via the web. So some work going on in the background. One of the other things that we know we need to do is buy some new switch hardware. As we plan these meetings, we always love it when we have a host that can bring in all the hardware that they may have from their company and put these meetings together for us. Unfortunately, we don't always have that kind of host. And what we need to be able to make sure of is at Merit, I have the same kind of new hardware available so that I can bring it on site. Merit, as you've heard, runs a regional network. And there's a lot of hardware that we have to run our network in Ann Arbor, and sometimes that hardware is available to me to bring on site, sometimes it's not. And what we're finding is the need for me to invest in some new switch hardware that I can bring on site to these meetings and just have it. Some of the other possibilities, things that we're still talking about with the steering committee and the program committee, is this idea of a presenter's website, a way in which we can help the program committee and all the presenters manage their presentations. It's not terribly friendly right now in terms of the way we have to manage the submission and approval process. And so we're standing ready and waiting to help Steve and his colleagues figure out a better way of doing that. As many of you use the NANOG email list, you know that sometimes the Merit NANOG server is slow. And so we're working with our systems folks back in Ann Arbor to improve the server hardware and the architecture to support the NANOG list. Just thought I might share with you some information on future meeting sites as we know it today. You will again probably hear a lot more of this information from Steve and others as the meeting goes forward, but I thought I would just share with you what I know about Spring '06, and that's that it's not confirmed yet. We do have some active discussions going on, but I do not have a hotel contract and I do not have a confirmed site yet for Spring '06. The good thing is I do for October '06. That's our joint meeting with Aaron that was supported by the community. And that meeting is confirmed and we're working through hotel logistics now. But that's a good thing in that we should be able to very shortly publish when the October 6th meeting is going to happen. February '07, we're looking at doing some sort of one-day joint program with the Internet 2 folks. The Internet 2 joint techs meet in February, and working with the steering committee and the program committee, we thought it would be a good idea to see if we could do a one-day overlap with those folks. Again, the idea is to try to combine some meetings, save on travel for everyone. And planning is underway. It's very positive, and I think that next maybe 2 months we'll be able to publish something on where we'll be for February '07. Just some brief acknowledgments. Again, as I said when I started my brief presentation, is that I'm just the spokesperson for a lot of folks who do a lot of work to make this meeting happen. Of course, the steering committee, the program committee, and the list admins interact with Merit staff on a daily basis, and they're really driving the meeting and helping Merit through the process. We certainly couldn't do these meetings without our hosts and sponsors, and they're listed there. Again, they're a big part of what makes it financially viable for all of us to enjoy this meeting and for all of you to have an affordable registration rate. The Merit staff attending the meeting, this is an important item, I think, for the community to appreciate. Merit isn't just an organization that does meeting planning. We actually have a group of engineers and our director of our networking operations back at Merit here with us in Dallas. It's again a commitment by Merit that what NANOG is all about is important to our activities, not just planning a meeting. There's some Merit staff back in Ann Arbor listening and watching to this meeting and also worrying about making sure that the systems that we support and need are working appropriately. Some of you may have noticed, if you were on Merit's website or NANOG's website this morning, that we had a glitch. We had a big file system problem that caused 2 or 3 programmers to come in and do some hardware upgrades, and not that that's anything new for all of you. It's just an indication again that there's some Merit staff paying attention to all those details back in Ann Arbor for us. The Merit staff on site, you'll see our name badges, but I thought it's really important. Some of these folks, you know us all by name now and face because you see us all, but this meeting really couldn't take place without the great support of a number of folks, a lot of technical people, as well as Carol and Susan and Gail doing the registration process. So I wanted to make sure that I said thank you to all of those folks. And that's it. Anybody got questions for me?
I seem to have a lot of questions today.
Surprise, surprise.
But yeah, I was wondering if you could share with us why it is strategically in Merit's interest to continue to play this pivotal role in the NANOG hosting. And then secondly, this whole revolution thing that happened like a year or so
Evolution
ago.
thing.
Excuse me. This whole evolution thing that happened a year and a half. I'm just curious, are things easier for you? Are they more difficult now? Do you feel any degree of greater support from the community or not? Just curious.
Okay, this is the disclaimer portion. This is Betty's opinion. It's interesting that you asked that question, Bill. Just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Mary, we met with Merit's board. Merit has 2 meetings twice a year with its board of directors, one in February and another in June, and that very question was asked. Given that Merit probably took some bruises along the way from the meeting that we had in Reston to the elections that took place in October. And we had to ask ourselves, was it worth it? Was it really worth it for Merit to go through that process and continue to host NANOG? And if so, why was it important for us to do that? Because again, Merit's main focus is not to host NANOG. Merit's purpose in being is to run a very first-rate, high-end educational research network in the state of Michigan. But in doing that, regional networking, it's also important for Merit to showcase its leadership in technology in the larger community. And that's why we do NANOG. It's the attachment to what we do regionally in the educational and research networking activities, and so that we can sort of rub elbows with all of you, that Merit can continue to provide a collaborative, neutral environment for all of your discussions to take place. It was felt by our board of directors that that was an important role for Merit. I talked with a few folks at the newcomers meeting earlier, and some others along the way down the hallway here, about what would happen if Merit didn't do NANOG. What if Merit said it didn't want to do it? How would it look? And as we all know, it would go on. There's some, if the community really felt that it was important to have a NANOG, there would be a way to do it. The issue is that Merit felt it was still in a good position, and as long as there's cost recovery and there's no harm to Merit's infrastructure or its members' budget to do NANOG, it believed that the community goodwill was enough of a reason. And so I hope that all of you feel the same way, that we continue to see ourselves as a part of the community, not as someone who is really just doing meeting planning, but someone who brings from Michigan a great deal of expertise in educational and research networking to the table to discuss with you, as well as facilitate this meeting. So that's why, Bill.
The second half of the question.
Okay, sorry.
Are things easier?
Are things easier? Yes.
Can we hold on the first point first
Sure.
for a sec? Which is your question of what would happen. There are 2 alternative models we can see in existence today. We can see the one where in Europe and Asia, where essentially the Internet Registry takes a much stronger role. And Europe's a pretty sad example, because the ops community is essentially overwhelmed by the registration community, and what's happened is a fragmentation, so there are now national and regional ops groups. Whereas here and in Africa and also in America Latina, the registries are separate, and a number of folks here helped form some of those from the operator communities, and it works very well. It's like here, it's the partnership. Second thing is to thank Merit for being an educational base for this instead of a vendor base, and whether that vendor be an operator or a manufacturer is irrelevant, but having an educational base for this is, I think, very important. And I, for one, being on a steering committee, would not enjoy a transition to a standalone organization that had to have real bylaws and I do that in my daytime job. I don't think anybody wants to do that. That's worse than having to give talks or be on the mailing list committee.
But speaking truthfully to Bill's second half question, yes, it's easier. At one level, it's easier because I feel that we're talking as a community together, that we're aiming for that transparency, that Merit has certain strengths and platforms that it can bring forward and leverage at NANOG, and the fact that we are working together to maintain this community makes it easier. There are certainly some tensions, because it's different when we're working as a community as opposed to just Merit over here just making decisions on its own and not having to talk to you about them first. And we have to remind ourselves to engage with the community before we just react and do something. So it is easier, it is better, but it's a little bit of a retraining for some of us. Again, thank you all very much for being here, and I hope you all enjoy the meeting.
And Chris Malater, who's the chair of the mailing list administrative panel, and I see other pieces of panel wandering towards the front of the room. Unobtrusively, subtly, and in very small type. If you're feeling very blue,
Thank you. What? Is it okay? No. That's for sure. Sure. Is that okay? I don't know what happened. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how to do this. Yes? Hey. There we go. Imagine that. All right. Take two. I'm Chris. I'm from the mailing committee. Where did Randy go? We've taken quite the bashing from Randy today. We are the Bastard Stepchildren Committee. We don't have pretty colored name tags. Rob is here, as is Susan. Our other member, Steve Wilcox, is not here this time. He will be in June.
Christopher, your slides are non-compliant. I see a Broadwing logo on the bottom right-hand corner.
Well, guess what? I put it together in the car, so, you get what you get. So for our agenda, we're going to talk about our membership process that we submitted to the steering committee. Addition to the AUP, we'd like to propose a change, and we'd like to hear about it. Our statistics that were reported for January, and then we'll take your questions, comments, meetings. Thank you. Okay, membership. Steve Gibbard resigned between the previous meetings. We selected Steve Wilcox. So we have me, Susan, Rob, Steve. Questions? Okay, process flow. This is probably the number one question that we get and the number one comment that we get, or thing that we get commented on. I'll walk you through it. When a user sends an email to the list that happens to be questionable towards one of the sections of the AUP, one of us might happen to judge that it be in violation of the AUP. Then we talk about it for a little while. For small things, one of us sends an off-list note to that person telling them what they're doing wrong, giving them ideas for change, and explaining our reason for concern. If they keep doing it, they're likely to get an official warning. And then we tell them what happens if things keep going on. And if they keep going after that, we're likely to suspend their posting privileges for some period of time. And if they come back and they keep doing it, they're likely to have their posting privileges removed. Now note that we do not take their ability to read the list away. We simply take their ability to post to the list away. Yes?
When you say for one-off violation, a volunteer sends, but how was that decision reached as a group, or that volunteer does it unilaterally?
It depends. For certain things, like where people use aliases and there's no identification as to who they are in the mail, that's a pretty basic violation, and any one of us is likely to send an email, and we'll copy our list so that we know that it's been done. For other things, it's really a judgment call on the part of the staff to figure out, does it make sense? Is it pretty basic that they're being silly? Or is it something we should talk about to see if there's a larger ramification to what's going on? So this is our process. Any questions, comments, concerns about our process?
I'm still, I guess, following up on Randy's question. Let's say 2 in the morning, you happen to be still up and you see a message that violates the AUP.
That's quite likely.
The other 2 guys are still asleep.
Yes.
And you think you're just going to go ahead and send a warning note because you think this clearly violates the process. Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
It is possible because there are certain sections of the AUP that are very clear. There are certain questions such as, is your post to the list off topic? Well, some people have different ideas of what on topic and off topic is, and then comes the question of, it's a community, so there's obviously going to be a certain amount of community aspects to the list. And one of the things, when we first started with this, people were very harsh and they wanted us to be very strict on the on-topic enforcement. We tried that, it didn't work too well. People didn't like that either. So then it's kind of a pendulum. Sometimes we have to find the right balance. So for certain things, it's quite easy, it's quite clear. For other things, it's not, and we are growing up and figuring out what that is.
Joel Yeagley. I'd just like to say, regardless of how the process actually, has been designed to work at this point, the fact that you guys have taken a rather light touch to mailing this moderation is, I think, probably the best thing you could have done. And as long as you go forward being mindful of that, I think the complaints about moderation will continue to be virtually non-existent. I mean, there's the too little problem, obviously, but
we've been through that too.
Yes, I mean, erring on the side of moderation is, I think, the truest course here.
Thank you.
It's my duty to provide the counterpoint to that. I think.
Could you introduce yourself before you?
I'm Bill Woodcock. I'd prefer a much heavier touch and much more moderation and many fewer postings.
And the great part about it is that nanog-admin@nanog.org list, we get all of your feedbacks, both positive, negative, whether we should be harder, whether we should be lighter, and we listen to them all.
This is Louis from Equinix.
Hey, Louis.
How you doing, Chris?
Good.
Is the next thing you guys going to be working on, it would be an appeals process for the violator?
There is a discussion within the steering committee as to what an appeals process is, what it should be, and where it should be coming from. An appeals process from the mailing list committee's standpoint is, to be completely honest, not our purview. We do what we do and they do what they do, and that's part of the charter. So if they want an appeal, they can have an appeals process. The last understanding that I had from the last call that I was on with them was that merit is the last line of appeal.
When you're sending the notice to the offending person...
Hold on a second before you do that. Where's Betty? Is that correct? Was that our last... Where we left off was that the only official appeals process today was with merit? Well, in conjunction with the steering committee. I mean, ultimately... Right. Ultimately, Thanks for the Diet Coke.
Thanks. Mail list administration is a tough one when it comes to Merit because legally, because Merit owns the trademark called NANOG, technically it owns the responsibility for any legal action that may result as opposed to of action on the list. So there is, again, this balance that we talked about in terms of partnership with the community. Merit does not want to have a heavy-handedness in list administration. Believe me, we don't want heavy-handedness. We like that there's a mail list team, and we like that there's a steering committee. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Merit has to have the ability to say, go, no go. It's just any organization has to have that. But it would be the last resort, the absolute last resort.
There's one other question. For the note that you send to the offending person, is that coming from your email address or is that coming from an alias?
It's interesting that you should ask that because you're part of the guidelines that I use when I send a lot of those out. Since Steve has left, and Steve was sort of the person who tended to spearhead a lot of that, I've sort of stepped into that role and been the sort of the guy who sends the requests out. So I always think, well, you know, if Craig or Bill were still running this, what would they say? So, you know, I send out something, and it is from my own account that says, you know, for the paragraph up there that begins for one-off violations, you know, pretty much you see something that's clearly not aligned properly, and you say, hi, you know, hi Bill, I know that that's you who's posting from equinixdude@gmail.com. Not everybody knows that. I'd like to draw your attention to our AUP section number. Don't remember what it is without looking. I always have to look. And we'd ask that you please honor our AUP by putting your real name in the from field or signing it in some way in your signature or whatever when posting to the list. Thanks a lot, signed Rob, speaking on behalf of the mailing list admin committee.
Okay, the specific problem I'm bringing up, though, is one time in the past, a person had received, or the system had received a note from a very specific person, and that person happened to be proc mailed. So they never actually got the notice that they had been in violation of the AUP because they had been proc mailing all of your mail.
Was that me in particular?
No, this was a different scenario. A different person who had sent email to an offender in the past.
Yeah, that's the recipient's problem.
Well, the solution might actually be that you guys have an alias that is the official mailing alias for the mailing list group.
Well, let me put it this way, Bill. If there were a requirement that somebody be talked to a second time, I would probably defer to someone else to avoid looking like I was being overbearing. So if everybody on the mailing list admin committee ends up proc mailed, I would say that represents a problem on the sender's end.
Regardless, if you had sent it from a specific authority email address,
We do not have a
you wouldn't
roll
have that
account.
problem.
We do not have a roll account. There is none that exists.
When we are looking for authority, we ensure that the mail is sent from srh@merit.edu.
I think what the speaker's trying to get at, and Michael Loftus, Mod West, is that there needs to be a roll account, and I think that that's the recommendation that is being made here, is that a roll account be made. But I would like to additionally add that it be handled similar to a lot of enterprise support systems. You still sign it with your name and with your signature, so there's a sort of ownership of who owns it. And maybe it is taken one step further at some point in that there's a history of, you know, the discussion that happened with a particular action. The goal is that the mailing list admins and stuff don't get individually singled out and shot down potentially for what feel sometimes to certain people as being unilateral actions when they're clearly not. And also from Merit's perspective, if, you know, AUP violations are called into into their realm, they can look at what's happened.
Yep.
And I don't know what exists there. I'm not obviously on that committee, but I think that that's what is being gotten at.
Everything always gets, the way we do it today is everything always gets copied back to the list so that there's always a history. But we will definitely take that offline and discuss it with Merritt about the possibility of getting a roll account.
Yeah, they just, Randy Bush, IJ, I may be the nastiest Brock mailer on the block.
Imagine
I'm
that.
certainly notorious for it. But if you send mail that is CC'd to something I'm responsible for, like steering at nanog.edu, nanog.org, then that gets past my proc mail filter. And so I suggest that you have a roll account and you also advise people on the webpage, hey, when you subscribe, please make sure that mail from the following from gets through all your filters.
That's fine.
Whitelisted.
Anything else on the process before we get on to the more fun stuff? All right. We want to make a change to the AUP. It's the first time that we've made a change to the AUP since we've had a mailing list committee, and it's the first time the AUP has been changed in a while. So, this came out of an issue that came up in the last month, and it was a difficult issue for us, and we're proposing this to you to make it easier for us, and everybody else in general too. Challenge response sender whitelisting software, which requires interaction by any party to validate a post to the NANOG mailing list as non-spam, shall be treated by the list administration team like any other condition that generates a bounce message. Subscribers with software, such as, but not limited to TDMA, that is misconfigured in this fashion are subject to removal from the list without notice and are welcome to resubscribe at such time as their software is fixed. Thank you for the applause. I dressed up for you guys today. I didn't shave though. However, we definitely want to hear comments on this. People like it, people don't like it. Is there an opinion on this? Should we take the applause as let's just do it?
Do it. Do it. Is there something for vacation mailers?
Oh, hold on. Funny you should say that. Should we treat vacation messages in the same fashion? And there's multiple opinions on this, and strong opinions on this, and especially on the last point. The first point I don't think people have too much of a problem with, but the last point with the vacation mailers, there's definitely two sides on that. Though there may be one side that's a minority, there's still a side and people should talk about it. So, and there's a microphone and you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'll just comment on this real quickly. Joel Yegley. In general principle, I'm opposed to summarily removing people from the list. On the other hand, if you're DOSing the list, I mean, that's really what this is. This is a DOS on the subscribers to the list. When your software is misbehaving in this fashion, then you really need to not be posting to the list or responding to the users who post to the list. The only other thing I would add would be, I mean, the corollary to this is a BCP for connecting to the mailing list, obviously. Good hygiene practices for connecting to the mailing list as opposed to what will get you removed.
Jared Mach, NTT America. I operate a machine some people may know called Puck, where I host one or two different mailing lists that various people subscribe to.
A few, huh?
Just one.
Just one,
maybe.
Okay.
And I generate a lot of spam or content or something that people think. What we've done as far as this goes, or what I've done, since it's pretty much mostly me, is I will use my best judgment on when to remove people. Obviously, people who are responding with the auto whitelist stuff, I'll try and get rid of real quick. But primarily, I go and I take back from people who complain, of which I get lots of copies of messages from Randy back from bounces. Some of the times I remove the people, some of the times I'm lazy and I don't. But I generally try and either remove them, especially if they're on like a 1 or 2 month vacation. There's a lot of people who subscribe and like go on a sabbatical or something and just generate bounces. So
I'll respond to that since I wrote the verbiage that's up there. The reason that I wrote subject to removal from the list without notice rather than will be kicked off the list was I wanted to give Sue Joyner, who ends up being the person who actually does the editing of the files, I wanted to give her the latitude to use good judgment on that.
Pete Templin, TextLink, would it be worthwhile for both this and the vacation mail to differentiate between posts that kick back to the list versus posts that kick back to the sender?
Yes, we'd like to do posts that kick back to the list. If they, well, do we, I mean, discuss. Do people have an opinion one way or another? I mean,
Well, obviously, the massive damage is done when it's sent back to the
list. I mean,
the
I
individual
understand the
senders,
list.
I don't care
Yeah,
quite so much.
really, yeah, whatever.
When's the last time this happened? Because the reply to is set to the user, isn't it? And the way Exchange, Martin Hannigan runs this. The way that Exchange works, that's the biggest offender, is that it sends it to the reply to, I believe, of the message that it receives, and it does it once in a 30-day period. So is this really a problem, or is this just like a sentiment, like let's do it? And
I don't know that that's necessarily a problem or a
okay,
sentiment.
so if it's
I
a
think
problem,
it's just,
then why are we doing it?
I think it's more following.
I mean, if it's not a problem.
Perhaps best practice. We do it for the one, maybe we should do it for the other, just to keep
So-
on the even keel.
I'll give you one real life example and then I'll stop. So at an unnamed company, I used Exchange, and that's all I was able to use for work.
Right.
And they wanted me to post to the NANOG and read the NANOG list from my work account. And I would not turn on vacation because I could not make it not send back to the list. So I would have to carry my BlackBerry with me on vacation to make sure that something important didn't come to me. I feel okay about it if it's a kickback to the list, and I don't think that there is a problem with that anymore. But if it's one user says, oh, this guy sent me a vacation message and he's really on vacation, I want him removed from the list, I have a problem with that.
Okay. Is there any other opinions on that? Do you all feel the same way as Marty? Do you disagree? If you get a spam back as a sender or a vacation message back as a sender, are you going to be so unhappy that you'd like the mailing list committee to remove them from the list for that?
Joe Provo, no, the person can plonk if it's a one-to-one problem, that's a sender recipient problem. You guys shouldn't be involved. You wouldn't know until somebody whines. If they're whining to you, they have bigger problems.
I agree.
If I receive a challenge for every message that I send to the list, I don't want to see those. If I get one vacation message from one guy every once in a while, that doesn't bug me that much. If your vacation works the way it's supposed to, and most of them do, by and large, those messages are annoying but not invasive. But if every time I send a message to the list, I get a challenge back from that user, then yeah, well, I would plonk that one almost instantly, so I would never see mail from that person again. But well, that's just me.
As a matter of how it actually operates, you would end up cached after having gone to their website to validate your post to the list as non-spam once. However, it's worth noting that if one person does this and there are 80 posts to the NANOG list in a day, that there are 80 people, or probably less than 80 people given the number of people who post on a daily basis multiple times, who are getting these emails back saying your mail has been quarantined, your mail has been quarantined. And whether it goes to the list or to the individual, if it goes to the list, it represents a big problem. What's up, Randy?
Goes to the list.
Oh, if it goes to the list, absolutely kill them. But if it goes, if it goes to the individual, my feeling on it is that first off, people think it's rude, okay, and because they think it's rude, they complain to us because something that was posted to the list resulted in this. When this happened before, we got probably over a dozen complaints during the first 24 hours that this was going on. And so a discussion ensued about exactly what was going on and exactly what the complaints were about. And a decision was arrived at, and we removed the person from the list. as far as the vacation mail issue, I sat around with Marty this morning and talked about that. I agree that it's a grayer area. However, I'd like to point out that by percentage of people who post to the list, which is not necessarily reflective of the people who read the list, it looks like about 5% plus or minus of the messages that actually hit the list are coming from an Exchange server. And you always have the option, thanks to the wonders of NANOG Post, which everybody here who posts to the list is subscribed to. For those who have forgotten, it's a shadow mailing list that never gets any traffic, but whether you are subscribed to NANOG Post is what governs whether you are able to post to the list. You can always post to the list from your work account while subscribing to the list from a Hotmail account, from a Gmail account, from whatever, that won't create those vacation messages when you adhere to corporate policy and set your vacation bit.
Joel, you confused me a bit. What's the difference to me, the random poster to the list, in getting a vacation message from Bozo versus a TMDA message from Bozo when I post to the list? It's still a Bozo message.
I consider them to be the same and equally odious.
Yeah, but I was asking Joel who differentiated.
The Bozo message is a Turing test. It says, prove to me that you're not a machine, right? Everyone here has probably seen the graphics on the web that are little pictures that you're supposed to decipher and type into the form. Well, those things have to get more and more sophisticated all of the time in order to keep the machines from proving that they're human. Well, there's a technology escalation that goes on with Turing tests, which says what the Turing test is doing is prove you're a human. Well, at some point I won't be able to do that. So I really prefer not to see those things be in common usage. On a strictly practical perspective, I help administer a mailing list with a few tens of thousands of users on it, and we get a particular Brazilian IP, ISP, that has no hysteresis in their challenge response system, and as a result, every message produces a response. And so those users have to find a new ISP in order to either subscribe or post to this list.
I don't have a particular response to that. I agree with Joel. We can discuss CAPTCHAs and why they don't work offline.
I think we're lucky in this region to be a region of diligent workers. I'm Bill Woodcock again. There are other regional operators group mailing lists that I subscribe to where any posting immediately results in a deluge of vacation mail back from the vast majority of the operators who are on vacation.
Do you find that annoying in any way?
Very, extraordinarily annoying. So I support both the whitelisting and the vacation as grounds for immediate removal from the list. And if somebody really cares, they can resubscribe. It's not like
the way that I'm framing this is that there is no stigma attached to getting bounced off the list. We're simply removing it due to a configuration
They're
problem.
not there anyway. It's a bot. It's not a person. If they're not there, they don't need to be on the list.
So someone walked up and pointed out to me that I would probably be carrying my BlackBerry anyways, whether I was on vacation or not.
That's for sure.
That is for sure, but...
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I
have many times.
One thing that we want to clarify before we go too far on this is that if we remove somebody from the list, any decision that the list administration team makes, the user in question is always notified. So if we
perhaps without prior notice.
Yep. We will any decision that we make that affects the list will always be communicated to the individual that has done something wrong.
So the TMDA thing is more, I think, a representation, a clue factor than anything. the vacation thing is usually corporate policy. The only thing I'd like to say in response to some of the additional comments is some of us have to observe corporate policy regardless of being able to or not able to, because of proxies and other things, use Gmail from work, etc. It's irrelevant. There are companies, there are people on our list, I'm sure, that have to follow these policies. And I'll point out that it's likely, personally, as a real experience, if I had had my vacation on half the time that I was on vacation, I would have missed things like the panics hijacking. And even though you'll send me a message and tell me that I'm off the list, in that particular problem, you know, there was definitely some direct involvement, and there could be some other issue with some other company that comes out to the list. It's a big deal, but they've been taken off because, you know, they're following corporate policy, and you may not even know you're off the list for 1 to 5 to 3 days. Who knows?
Well, they're
If you're going to talk on the subject, please don't just shout it out. Please come to the microphone, because it turns into a big haze.
So it's only posting privileges is what Bill Woodcock yelled.
No,
So it's everything.
You remove them as a recipient.
Okay, so it's not only posting privileges.
I would like to point out a couple of things. One is that there are publicly available archives.
Okay, thanks.
Number two is, if you work for a company that's that tight as far as their corporate policies and restrictions go, probably the minor inconvenience of either unsubscribing or resubscribing to the list is the least of your worries.
Mike Hughes links, and I did have a comment, but Rob just read my mind. And I was going to say, there's no harm if they get kicked off the list. There's archives. You know, they can just catch up when they get back or when they sort their lives out. And
we're not talking about throwing people off the list for 6 months.
Forever. They're not being,
Yeah,
totally.
Steve Gibbard, and I will point out also that not so much in the vacation message case, but in the case of the challenge response thing, somebody who's responding to mail sent to them with challenge response stuff, and when the mail is coming from people like list posters who probably don't particularly care if that individual receives their mail or not, they're not getting list mail anyway.
Can I make a suggestion instead of a wind?
Yeah.
How about making this a misdemeanor offense, and if it's repeated, you actually like warn the person?
I think part of the goal is that we stop the misconfiguration so that it doesn't become annoying, so that it's not a repeated thing.
When's the last time this happened?
2.5 weeks ago.
Off list, right?
Off the list.
So I don't know who said it, but an interaction between
No,
one
as
user-
in they are now off the list.
Okay, when's the last time it actually happened on the list?
The message went to the list 2.5 weeks ago.
And it said out of office reply, I am on vacation. That you're talking the TDMA message.
I got so many copies of that
86
message.
Yeah, I know the one you're
between
talking
whatever went to me and whatever may or may not have gone to the list, and the multiple copies that were forwarded to NANOG admin, I could actually not speak knowledgeably about whether it
Okay,
went to the list.
how many out of office reply, vacation, etc. messages went to the NANOG list in the last 365 days? I rest my case.
If you had raised this question like the percentage of people that had used Outlook like you did at breakfast, I would have run a grep over my mail spool and been able to tell you an answer to that.
Randy Bush, IJ. I want to note that this is supposed to be a network operators list, not a network idiots list. They should be able to run their mail systems.
I don't believe that anybody in this room disagrees with you on that point at all, Randy. The problem is that
For better or for worse?
no, well, in some cases, yeah, but there's a level of sophistication that people develop over time, that people who are new to the organization may also be new to network operating, and there is the level of patience that everybody must endure to get the clue factor up, for lack of a better word.
Michael Loftus, Mod West again. I think that this discussion really centers mostly around the problem with the exchange vacation autoresponder, and maybe
There's both.
But
it's
there's
both.
others,
It's,
and-
it's,
Unix one
yeah.
is just as bad.
Yeah.
It's just that the people who use the Unix one generally tend to know about its shortcomings.
And so I think that what needs to be stated is that when they're removed from the list is to state to them, you know, for the Microsoft case, there's not much you can do, but try to complain to Microsoft that you need to respect the precedence list or precedence bulk that the mailing list sends with, and for the other cases that they need to, you know, notify their author to try to respect that.
For the people who are in the back chatting, if this doesn't pertain to this discussion, then you shouldn't be in here. If this does, you should come to the microphone. Remove them from the list. You've been removed from the conference room.
Patrick Gilmore, Akamai. I'd like to declare this topic dead and either have vote or do it, because I think we're done. I think everybody knows what everybody else thinks here, and shall we move on?
That's fine. There's questionability as to how we actually make a change to the AUP since it's not really in the charter. So, it is in the charter, changing the AUP? Okay. Well, we'll be making this recommendation to you soon. We'll move on. Okay. Cool. Moving on. List stats. Hopefully this will be fast. January stats. And this is our first meeting that we've actually been able to get our stats from the webpage and blah, 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 because this is the first, second month that we've gotten stats. Thank you very much to Merit for all the people that put a lot of hard work into that. They're really cool. Post to the list, 8,039, 2 warnings, 2 threads that had to be killed with verbal, and 2 members were removed from posting for various reasons. Questions, comments, concerns?
But I think the most important question is, can you shed some light on why these people were removed?
No.
How many warnings were they given?
No.
Anything that can flavor
No.
that you're not just doing this unilaterally because
No.
you hate that person?
No. No.
And we're not posting their names to the list either.
Patrick Gilmore, Akamai.
Yes.
I'm okay with you saying no, but I think that brings up, this means that we really do need an appeals process, because as much as I like the two of you, well, sort of, then I think that, that's a pertinent question. Were they removed for real reasons? And
Yes.
if you're not going to tell us, then
I'm not going to tell you why people were removed.
if you're not going to tell us, which is fine, then there needs to be a way for somebody who has been removed to be unremoved in a, objective fashion.
And that's definitely something that can be taken up.
Randy Bush, IIJ.
Yes.
And steering committee.
Mm-hmm.
Trials in secret where the results and the victims, etc., are not known and the causes are not known are generally not done in this society. I don't think that's acceptable.
The president might disagree with you.
And I might...
That's pretty legal, I guess.
Yes, but even though he's a cousin by name, he's not a cousin in actuality. But in this case, the mailing list committee does report to the steering committee. And
reports on what you asked for.
no, I believe it has to be made public why people are banned from the list. No secret trials with secret conclusions and secret removals. If somebody's banned, I can understand not wanting to shame them by not wanting to name them without their consent. But the cause, the result, and the process should be open.
Randy, we are absolutely more than happy to divulge whatever amount of information we are directed to divulge. At the present time, we are not directed to divulge any of it, and we are erring on the side of caution in terms of publicly shaming people. However, if the steering committee believes...
Name's not attached to it, they're not shamed.
That's not true.
If the steering committee believes that providing that information publicly in some sort of forum is the appropriate thing, we're more than happy to do that. But we're not happy to do it without a framework and a set of guidelines for exactly what is expected from us.
Joe Provo, can you at least say whether it's clear AUP violations or whether it's gray area crap?
clear AUP violations. However,
Good enough for me.
Let's move on to this publicly shaming topic. There were 8,000 posts to the list. Generally, when people get to the bottom category, they've done a whole lot of things that everybody notices. When we tell you why we remove people, everybody knows who it was and what they did. You're publicly shaming people. We're not going to do it. If you guys want us to do it, that's your prerogative. You can certainly direct us to do it, and we will do it. But I'm certainly not getting up here right now and giving that information out. That's your deal.
I guess one of the things that confuses me about that stance, Chris, is you already told us that everybody knows what this person is doing.
Yep.
So there is no degree of shaming that one can do to that person they haven't already done to themselves.
And that's their choice. They can make a fool out of themselves. I'm not going to do it.
You know, I think that there are ways that one can communicate that you're not just saying, you know, I don't like you, I'm going to get rid of you, in various forms. Like the particular categories of things include this person is in violation of using obscenities. This person was repeatedly told not to post this thread, and he repeatedly posted. I think that's enough. That would be enough that shows that it's not just...
And how many people post with obscenities to the list, Bill? And how many people then subsequently stop posting for a long time? I bet they're probably in category number 2. Maybe. You never know. But I'm not going to... How about this? This subject is dead here. If the steering committee wants to direct us that way, and if the membership, want the steering committee to direct us to do it that way, there are plenty of opportunities for you to channel it that way. I'm not going to get into it here because that has been our policy. That is the way that it is, and I'm not going to change it at the microphone.
I'll say one last thing. My own personal stance is I think I tend to agree with Randy in that I think there needs to be more transparency here, particularly since this is one of the things that led to the evolution.
We do not disagree. However, there is no framework for it. And, pardon? I am more than happy to do whatever we are directed, Randy.
What he said.
Hi. I'm Steve Gibbard, still. And I've got a question on these stats. I see they're labeled as January stats. Does that mean this all happened in the month of January? Or
Yes, January 5th to February 5th.
So there were 8,000 posts in the month of January?
That is what is reported.
Wow. Okay. I'm a little concerned about the posting privileges removed numbers in that case, because I believe that's 2 is the same number of people who had their posting privileges removed in the first 8 months or however long it was that I was on the committee. So that seems like a huge percentage increase in list removals. And I think the 2 that were removed in the first 8 months, I believe, were, you know, not publicly announced, but at least they were very poorly kept secrets. It was easy to find out who they were.
If you are skilled in the use of grep and have kept all of your mail and have a reasonable vocabulary of obscenities, you will find that these are very poorly kept secrets.
Okay, more to the point, the first two were identified to those who asked.
And if the body that governs us asks us, we will certainly tell them.
Just one more observation, Joel again. If anyone has noticed, there isn't a whole lot of shame on this mailing list. If you can't actually shame people into not deaggregating, how can you shame them into not posting?
An interesting question. Randy.
That second number is incorrect. There are 8,039 subscribers to the list.
Sorry. My bad. Any other questions regarding this? Obviously, I'm going to be real good right now there. 692. Thank you, Susan.
Hey, just a point of history. Martin Hannigan ran us and past member of the mailing list committee.
Former chair, too.
Former chair, that's right. First
Founder.
one. So I want to just, I really don't want to get involved in it, to be honest with you, but I just want to point out, in the first iteration of the mailing list, and you guys have every right to run it the way that you want to run it, so I'm not trying to tell you how to run it, just for historical purposes. In the first iteration of the mailing list, We did not publish the names, and there was objection to that, but we did concede and agree to publish the reasons so that it was open and fair. And the reason why we did not want to publish the names, and this was, the 2 were against and 1 was for, and 1 went to Merit and said, give me some guidance on this. Do you want the names posted or not? And a general agreement was made that it was a liability to post someone's name in a fashion on the list that in a negative way, coming from the people that run the list, but in the interest of the community, that it was fair and appropriate to at least post the AUP violation. And I understand what you're saying, Rob. You haven't been told to do this yet. Like I said, not trying to get involved, but I think it's not only fair to post the reason why the people or persons were suspended or whatnot, but also the threads. It would be nice to identify the threads, because a lot of those threads are people, and I have a lot of those people kill filed, and I'd be interested to know which threads are like off topic.
Okay, just to clarify, in case I didn't make myself
No, you're clear.
clear.
I just wanted to give you a historical perspective.
Just to be perfectly clear,
Yeah.
I am in agreement
Okay.
with everybody here who says it is good to have transparency. And I am perfectly willing, and I think Chris, by the way, he's nodding here, is perfectly willing to publish whatever information, if we, whatever is deemed appropriate. The problem is that if we do not have a framework and we do not have a policy written down, it'll end up being an ad hoc decision.
Okay. As a member of the organization as defined, who is responsible to do that, and when can we get someone to say when that's going to happen?
The steering committee is responsible for stating that, and I suspect that based on Randy's comments that it will be coming relatively soon.
I would expect so.
That is just fine. My point is that we are trying to be conservative about this, and without a specific policy in place, the safe thing to do is to not pass that information out until specifically directed.
So just so you,
pardon?
Just so, sorry, Randy. Just so I'm clear, I know that you guys are open and fair people, especially you, RS. But I also want to point out that I'm not saying anything about you, Malater. I also want to point out that this is kind of a lead back to the other issue where we got here because we wanted the mailing list to be less heavy-handed and more open. We wanted everything to be more open and fair. Whereas so the issue that some people were giggling about wasn't about Microsoft Exchange and vacation programs. It was about messages that people are not going to get. And now we have 2. So I agree with TDMA. I don't agree with vacation. And, there seems to be some confusion here. And I hope and encourage you guys to clear that up however you have to in the near future.
Okay, to answer Randy's shouted from the floor question, how is this safer than transparency? Transparency versus obfuscation is one axis, and policy versus ad hocery is a different axis, and they are orthogonal to each other. What we are deciding is that in the lack of policy, in the vacuum of policy, we are not going to make up policy as we go along. No, we didn't. No, there is no policy of non-disclosure, Randy. There's simply no policy of disclosure.
Yeah. Hold on one second. To be completely honest, I'm just simply not comfortable doing it. And if you don't like that, that's your problem. That's all there is to it. To be completely honest, I'm not comfortable doing that until Merit tells me it's okay, because it's the bottom line, and I don't want to get involved in it until then.
I'm still Bill Woodcock.
Hi.
Chris, what's on your next slide?
Do you want to go here, or are we done?
I would just like to point out that a lot of the mailing list process stuff is not documented in the charter, and that there's the opportunity for the community to discuss this on the NANOG futures list after this point. And certainly as a member of the steering committee, I want to hear what the community has to say about this, so please speak up. In addition to that, the community can make a proposal that some of this stuff go into the charter as far as things go, to be more prescriptive if they feel that that's necessary. And obviously that would be done in consultation with Merit and stuff as well.
After this meeting, can we make a change to that term limits for like 6 months?
Again, just for some background information, when Merit put together the new charter, we specifically left a lot of vagueness around the issue of the mail list administration because we knew it was a hot topic. And there was a lot for us to get through from where we were at with a merit-appointed program committee to an elected steering committee and an elected program committee. And we were hoping to give ourselves some time as a community to sort out what to do with list administration. So just so that you can all appreciate, we specifically left that void in the charter, knowing that as the community embraced the new charter, they could deal with the issue on what they wanted the list administration activity and process to look like. So just for purpose sake, Merit is again supportive of the community. There is a need to sort of protect the innocent, if you will, in terms of naming. I mean, I don't think anyone wants someone's name posted on the NANOG website for some activity that might be viewed as a negative. Merit wouldn't want to have that happen. On the other hand, if it is important for the community to have this kind of transparency, and you talk about that through the NANOG futures process, and you talk about the issue of mail list administration through the change in process and documenting it with the steering committee, I can't imagine that there's going to be any problem at Merit with documenting a process that wouldn't cause an individual direct harm. So that's sort of the official party line.
Thank you.
Still Louis from Equinix. I did not read the posts or the threads that have violated the AOP. So I'm wondering, were these removed from the archive?
No.
Thank you. Just making sure.
We don't remove things from the archive. That's why it's the archive. There it is.
Just one more thing. The ghost of Usenet Past has a tendency to reveal people for who they are, even if they aren't specifically named in a message. So, I mean, I think everybody has a pretty good idea of, you know, people who have posted inappropriate things to NANOG in the past, notwithstanding what future mailing list policy looks like.
Last chance. Get your apples now. Anybody else? Thank you. Yes, you have. Thank you all very much.
One last thing real quick. I just want to say, Mike Loftus with ModWest again, I just want to say that I think on behalf of everyone here that we all think that the list admins are doing a great job. I don't think that any of the anger was directed at any of you personally. This is just, we're trying to hash out what the policy should be.
Is that all? Is Randy going to come up here and continue the wonderful job he's been doing emceeing this?
It's still an open meeting. There is nothing scheduled to be next. Vince Fuller beat me up about something. Vince, you still here? Yep. I should say that Vince Fuller beat me up and he said, hey, this schedule change, he doesn't like it. He says, if there's going to be a bunch of tutorials, they should be separated out before or after so that those people who don't feel they need to be tutored don't lose time. I have also heard other comments that never again on Valentine's Day. My wife of 10 months certainly would agree with that. Anybody got any other bones to pick?
Not on Halloween either. That's an Aaron problem, not an NANOG problem.
I will be quiet. I will be quiet. I will be quiet. I will be quiet. Hey, never had so much fun since the hog stepped on my little sister. Have fun.